All right, we are going to, from here on out till May the 14th, try to tackle 2 chapters per night. Pray about that. Okay. So you're going to have to listen really fast this evening. And then at the end of this night, we want to have just a special few moments here. Mike Gage will come up and talk about his upcoming trip to Jamaica and teaching that he'll be doing down there. That was supposed to be on the agenda for Sunday night, and somebody in this room forgot. I'm not going to tell you who that was, because it would very much embarrass me. But anyway, we're going to do that this evening. Chapter 41 and 42 of Genesis. Here's the opening bullet. Joseph the dreamer. We all know about him being a dreamer. Chapter 37, he dreamt that his brothers and his dad would bow down to him. Has become now Joseph the interpreter of dreams. That's what we've seen. You knew with the Braden's teaching last week from chapter 40 that the baker and the cupbearer. Yeah, anyway, both of them had dreams, right? And I didn't have that right, did I? All of a sudden, yes, that's right. Cupbearer and the baker. Anyway. They had these dreams, and Joseph interpreted for them. So the next line says, the chief baker experienced the painful reality of his dream. You might remember his dream was picking fruit off of his head, which meant his head is coming off. So that's Genesis 40, verse 20. And the chief cupbearer, in his joy of getting his job back, forgot the interpreter of the dream. When he got out, and maybe in his joy, he just forgot to say a word about Joseph. By the way, in this chapter tonight, he will repent of that forgetfulness. We'll see that. Joseph was forgotten down in Egypt, but he was still fruitful even in jail. Now, keep those 2 words in mind. Forgotten, fruitful. Forgotten, fruitful. Forgotten, that's what he will name his boys. When he gets married, forgetful. God forgot him. Well, he says, even though, I've been forgotten by others, God has not forgotten me. And then the second one is, even in this land of his exile, he has borne much fruit. And so that's good. I think it was, I'm really creating a different image of myself for you here. Anybody watch Ernest? Ernest Saves Christmas, the Ernest films? I just go for all the highbrow stuff, in life. And anyway, one time when he was acting like the old lady, he on a walker, he sometimes portrays that person. And anyway, he talked about, the kids being named Mistake. Okay, anyway, that's not good. But you have faithful, fruitful, that kind of thing going on in Joseph's family. James Smith, in his commentary, says that the forgotten servant, that would be Joseph, becomes the faithful sovereign. He's probably trying to stress the alliteration a little much, but maybe not overly so. Here's the big picture. Let's not forget this. Let's not lose track of this, what the scholars call the meta-narrative. What's the big picture? How do these chapters fit into God's plan to save the world through Jesus? Well, this way. God continues to work behind the scenes. Can you say the book of Esther? Because that's what happens in Esther as well. So God continues to work behind the scenes to save the Messianic family. If the Messianic family goes down, we got real problems. So God is going to do this. We have to get God's son, which is Israel, in Egypt so that God can bring his son out of Egypt, which is really Jesus. Israel was God's son, but Jesus was God's son. So you have the prophecies of Hosea 11, verse 1, that is actually quoted in Matthew 2:15. So that's the big picture. Lest we lose the forest for the trees, just remember there's a lot of trees in this story tonight, and we'll be commenting in application of those trees. But the big picture is God's care for the Messianic family to make sure that they'll bless all the nations through him. So this is about dreams. I've titled the lesson, Dreams and Brothers. Dreams and Brothers. Dreams and Brothers. Chapter 41 is dreams. Chapter 42 is the beginning of the cat and mouse game that Joseph plays with his brothers. Now, I want to remind you, we've mentioned this before, that most of the time when the Bible uses the word dream, it means a vehicle of revelation. God making something known through this dream. In that sense, it's supernatural. Okay? And a lot of times when you hear people talk about church work today, we need to dream great dreams for God. Well, I'm all for that, okay? But that's not how the Bible normally uses that word. Because you can't just have these things. God determines who gets the dreams that are vehicles of revelation. Now, there are occasions when that's not the case. And I gave you one example here by Psalm 126, verse 1. And sometimes we around church use the term dream to say, well, what would be a preferable, faith-filled future for Park Plaza Christian Church? Where would we want the church to go? What would we want the church to do? How would we want the church to be? And when we use the word dream, and that's a dream great dreams for God, what does that look like? Well, that's a good statement. I'm not against those statements at all about stretching our faith and seeing what we need to do. Where does God want to take us? New vistas, new challenges, new beginnings, fresh beginnings, I guess I should say, that sort of thing. But that's, again, not what the Bible normally means. In Psalm 126:1, however, there is a reference sort of like that. Psalm 126 celebrates Israel coming back from Babylonian captivity. And this is what it says. When we came back from Babylon, we were like men who dreamed. Now there, it's not using the word dream like God's revealing something to you. It's just meaning like, hey, we're out of captivity. We're back in the Holy Land. We got a fresh start, new lease on life. Actually, since we're all adults, I'll go ahead and tell you this. The Hebrew word for dream in that particular passage is actually a word that means the vigor of boys going through puberty. And all of a sudden they discover they have the seed of life in them. So what he's saying is, it's like we had a brand new lease on life when we came back from Babylonian captivity. There, the idea, we're going to dream great dreams for God. That would be more true there. Is this making sense to you? Two different nuances. How do you know this? You take out your trusty, dusty concordance and you work through the passages. And so, here it looks like it's a dream that God gave. Here's a dream, use of the word dream some other way. So, usage determines the meaning of words. Okay, so anyway, there's that. Now, let's take a look at this. We will not have time, because chapter 41 is huge, to read all of this tonight. But I'm going to try to be judicious and read the parts. For instance, Pharaoh will have some dreams, and then later Pharaoh will tell Joseph what those dreams were. As Paul Kissling says in his commentary, when Pharaoh tells Joseph the dreams, as opposed to Moses just telling us what he dreamed, in the first part of chapter 41, here's Paul Kissling's words. The Pharaoh adds some color to it. Oh, what does that mean? That fish I caught was that large, No, it was a minnow. Come on. Anyway, sometimes we color it. Maybe so. The Bible's accurately quoting Pharaoh. That the Bible's not false here. It's just that sometimes the way the narrator tells it, like Moses in this case, inspired Moses, as opposed to what Pharaoh says. That's nothing inspired about what Pharaoh says. He's just a Pharaoh. Okay, so he colors it. So we'll look at his thing. Joseph might well have been in Egypt now for 7 years. This is item number 1 under the double dream of Pharaoh. What's the double dream? It's about cows and corn. Cows and corn. Why did God use that? Because everybody was agrarian. Everybody in the world at that point was a farmer. So God uses things to speak to our world, where we live. That's just what all the parables of Jesus are dealing with, things true to life in Jesus' world. A lady kneading yeast into dough. Fishermen fishing in the Sea of Galilee. Casting seed on the ground. So everything that Jesus did, same kind of relating to that culture. Cows and corn. Well, Joseph's been in Egypt now for at least 7 years, it would seem. And you do that by doing the math kind of backwards. I'll show you in a minute. And so these last 2 years, where's he been? In jail, exactly. In prison. So, by the way, the text starts out, after 2 whole years, how would your faith be after that? Do you think you'd ever be saying, God, are you paying attention? Is something going by you here? 2 whole years. Do you remember anybody else who was in prison for 2 whole years and nothing happened? Sat there on his backside, just thumbing away life? The Apostle Paul. Paul stayed in Caesarea jail for 2 years and finally found no way out except, I appeal to Caesar. That'll get him out of there. And every Roman citizen had the right to do that, by the way. Well, we will see in this chapter, Joseph also will take the initiative. Maybe he thinks God is being slow. And sometimes we feel that way. What's my good friend J.K. Jones say? That God is rarely early, but he's never late. So we kind of have to wait on the Lord, be patient. And so anyway, Pharaoh will have these dreams. He will ask his magicians, which really means kind of a priestly class of sorts, but they couldn't tell him what to mean. Now you might remember Nebuchadnezzar's case in the book of Daniel. The king doesn't tell the guys what the dreams are. He just expects them to know it. you phony balonies. You're just trying to buy some time here. You tell me the dream and then the interpretation. Oh, no man can do that except God. Yeah, that's kind of the point. So that's Daniel. In this case, Pharaoh does tell them the dreams, but they couldn't do it. So what I'd like to do is look with you at the interpretation. So look at Genesis 41, starting in verse 17. So skip down a little ways, verse 17. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, now we're going to back up and read how Joseph got into the presence of the king since he's been in jail. So we'll back up and get that. He said to Joseph, behold, by the way, you don't always pick that up, but that's how sometimes in the book, in the Hebrew language, it's not just getting the attention, but it's like this starts a new narrative. Behold, like something new here. In my dream, I was standing on the banks of the Nile. Now, you all know that the Nile was their main source of water, and also the Nile was almost worshipped in terms of its fertility power. Standing on the banks of the Nile, 7 cows, plump and attractive. I don't know that I've ever called a cow attractive, but that's the ESV word. But actually, these 2 different Hebrew words mean something along those lines. Okay? Joseph was known to be handsome. Well, came up out of the Nile and fed in the reed grass. That wouldn't be unusual. They would go down to the river, feed among the reed grass. 7 other cows came up after them, poor and very ugly and thin. Now again, when the Bible details things like that, there's significance to it. The Bible doesn't waste words, and so anytime there's attention drawn to some physical features like that, there's a point to it. Okay. So, but it says they had eaten, I guess it's verse 21, but when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them. Oh, I need to read the previous verse, I'm sorry. Let me back up. 7 other cows came up after him, poor and very ugly and thin, as I had never seen in all the land of Egypt. So these are kind of sicko cows. And the thin, ugly cows ate up the first ones, plump ones. But when they had eaten them, no one would have known that they had eaten them, for they were still as ugly as at the beginning. Okay, this is a weird dream. That would cause you to probably wake up. I'm guessing. That's just a strange kind of thing. I remember when we had sold our house to where James and Sarah Bond live, out on Ivy Road. They bought our house way back in the day. And so we were living at does anybody remember the rock house that sat on the corner of 96 and D across from Truman Elementary School? We were living there for a couple years. It was supposed to be only 1 year before we moved to Denver, but anyway, it ended up being 2. And I had Bentley out. He's driving now, but I had Bentley when he was just a little guy, and I put him down on the ground, on the grass, to take a picture of him. And I heard this, and I looked over, and there was this huge snake right by him, and its belly was like this. So I was grateful for the mouse that met its maker. But anyway, yeah, that's what you would think you'd expect these ugly, slick cows to just be bloated. Not so, not so. So, it says, when they'd eaten them, wouldn't have known they'd eaten them. Then I awoke, I bet. I also saw in my dream 7 ears of growing on one stalk, ears of corn, that is, full and good. 7 ears, withered and thin, blighted by the east wind. Now let's pause here just a minute. The west wind in the Holy Land gives you cool breezes because that's the Mediterranean. East wind comes right off the desert, and that's hotter than blazes. So it sprouted after them, and the thin ears swallowed up. Now, how could an ear of corn swallow another ear of corn? It's a dream. It's a dream. 7 good ears. And I told it to the magicians, but there was no one who could explain it to me. So that's what we would have read in the first few verses of the chapter. There you have it, the double dreams of Pharaoh, corn and cows. Now, go to the next part. You have to back up for this. The repentance of the chief cupbearer. So let's back up to verse 9 of Genesis 41. And so once Pharaoh tells these dreams and nobody can interpret them, here's what we read, verse 9. Then the chief cupbearer said to Pharaoh, I remember my offenses today. In my Bible, I drew an arrow back up to the last verse of chapter 40, yet the chief cupbearer did not remember Joseph, but forgot him. The theme of forgotten is going to be a big theme here. Anyway, what that literally says in Hebrew is what I gave you under number 1 there. I have been forced to remember my sins. That's a little bit more graphic than just, oh, shucks, forgot. He's viewing this as if I've committed a very bad thing here. So, verse 10. When Pharaoh was angry with his servants and put me and the chief baker in custody in the house of the captain of the guard, we dreamed on the same night, he and I, each having a dream with its own interpretation. A young Hebrew, that's how he will be identified, was there with us, a servant of the captain of the guard, when he said to him, he interpreted our dreams to us, giving an interpretation to each man according to his dream. And as he interpreted it to us, so it came about. I was restored to my office, and the baker was hanged. He was killed. So we know that story from what you covered last week, chapter 40, of course. But anyway, this guy at least, we already we're having Joseph identified then in the storyline where he's going to come in. So the repentance of the chief cupbearer. He feels sorry for his sin, and this has been brought to his attention. Now, the next part is Joseph's brought into the scene. Joseph's kind of been in and out a little bit in the narrative. Now he's going to be brought back from prison. I'm calling it shaved and changed. Shaved and changed. We pick it up in verse 14. Here's what it says. Then Pharaoh sent, and I bet he did this with some level of speed. He wanted the answer to this dream. And called Joseph, that's the young Hebrew, and they quickly brought him out of the pit. And when he had shaved himself and changed his clothes. Okay. This is now the third time in the Joseph narrative where clothes became crucial to this boy's destiny. The first time was the coat that his daddy got him that was dipped in blood by his brothers. Oh, an animal must have got him. Okay. The second time was Mrs. Potiphar tried to grab him and left his cloak in her hand, or his garment, whatever that was, maybe inner garment, as we said. And now the third time. So clothes play kind of a narrative role in the life of Joseph, for sure. So he quickly shaved and changed his clothes, and he came in before Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said to Joseph, I have had a dream. There's no one to interpret it. I have heard it said of you that when you hear a dream, you can interpret it. Joseph answered Pharaoh, it is not in me. Boy, what's he immediately do? He defers the praise to God. God will give Pharaoh a favorable answer. Guess what the word favorable is? Shalom. God will give Pharaoh a peaceful answer. Kind of an interesting use of the word. But also, I guess we'll comment on what the worship of this guy would have been in just a little bit. So, Joseph gives all the credit to God. He will give a peaceful answer. Let's look at the next part now. This is the interpretation by Joseph. And basically he says, the dreams are really one. Don't get wrapped up in the cows and the corn, Just the dreams are one thing. And that starts in verse 25. So we'll skip down to verse 25 because we read the others already. Then Joseph said to Pharaoh, the dreams of Pharaoh are one. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he is about to do. I don't know what Pharaoh thought when he said Elohim, God, like in the beginning, God. I don't know. But remember what Elohim is? Is it singular or plural? It's plural. The ending, I am, is plural. So could it be, that still there's kind of these pharaohs were mostly polytheists. They were mostly, God, worshiper of gods, various gods. So how this would have come out, how he said this, I don't know. God has revealed to Pharaoh what he's about to do. The 7 good cows are 7 years. So they stand for something. The dream is somewhat allegorical. This stands for that, this stands for the other. And the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dreams are 1. We've gotten that twice now. The 7 lean and ugly cows that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty years blighted by the east wind are also 7 years of famine. That's the first that word has appeared. Sometimes famines in the Bible are caused by God. Sometimes they're caused by fallen creation. Sometimes they're caused by war. Sometimes they're caused by disease. The Bible knows quite a bit about famine. Sometimes they're caused by God's people not obeying him, especially in the Old Testament. Okay. It is as I told Pharaoh. God has shown Pharaoh what he's about to do. There will come 7 years of great plenty throughout the land of Egypt, but after them will arise 7 years of famine. And all the plenty, here's our word again, will be forgotten, like Joseph's life was forgotten. In the land of Egypt, the famine will consume the land, and the plenty will be unknown in the land by reason of the famine that will follow it, for it will be severe. And the doubling of Pharaoh's dream means that the thing is fixed by God. The fact that it was double means no way changing this. And God will shortly bring it about. So there's the interpretation. We don't have to wonder. God helped Joseph just like he helped Daniel interpret the king's dreams. In fact, This last phrase in verse 32 there, where it says, God will shortly bring it about, it literally says, God was hurrying about to bring it about. That's kind of what this phrase, so is on task. It's on task. Not too hard to interpret this. I mean, he gives us the interpretation. So the next thing is that Joseph puts himself forward. He makes a suggestion about what should be done in light of this. And his suggestion means, I'm going to help your nation out, great Pharaoh. I'm going to offer myself as a Yahweh believer, and I'm going to help your pagan people. Now, when do you put yourself forward? When do you step up and volunteer? When do you, I don't know the answer to that. But what you have here is the suggestion by Joseph and really the sovereignty of Joseph, because he will get awarded for this. So we start reading in verse 33, and really this is a big one. We'd read all the way to the end of the chapter. But let's just take a look at this. We'll make some applications later. Verse 33, now therefore let Pharaoh select a discerning and wise man and set him over the land of Egypt. What's he doing? Is this first person or third person? It's third person. Hey, Pharaoh, got an idea? Probably what you ought to do is find somebody that's really good at this kind of stuff. It's kind of like Paul in 2 Corinthians, who said, I know a man who 14 years ago, whether in the body or out of the body, I don't know, God knows. He was caught up to the third heaven, and he saw things that no man could see. And you have to read down a little farther. He's saying, Paul, you twicky wabbit, you're talking about yourself. Yes, he was. And this, so this is sly. This is a very good way to do it if you got to brag about yourself. Anyway, so let him be over the land of Egypt. Verse 34. Then let Pharaoh proceed to appoint overseers over the land and take 1/5 of the produce of the land. Hey, there's tax money. I guess you all got yours done, right? Anyway, there's tax money. And so 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt during the 7 plentiful years. And let them gather all the food of those good years that are coming and store up grain under the authority of Pharaoh for food in the cities. And let them keep it. That food shall be for a reserve for the land against the 7 years of famine that are to occur in the land of Egypt, so that the land may not perish through the famine. He's giving a very practical suggestion for how this pagan nation can go forward. I just want you to, don't let that get by you. Daniel was charged with the responsibility of praying for Babylon. In fact, he worked for Babylon as a very high official. That's not always maybe what you want to do, but that's sometimes the best way to be salt and light in the world. So you have his sovereignty. Joseph puts himself indirectly in that very place, which is what Paul and others have done as well. Turn to the back side of your handouts for just a minute. Pharaoh is impressed with this, so let's look at that, beginning in verse 37. This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all his servants. They must have said like Gomer Pyle, well, golly, wow, this guy's like smart and stuff. And Pharaoh said to his servants, can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God? Oh, now that's interesting. If he's a polytheist, if he worships the gods, what's this mean? Well, we'll chat about that. Then Pharaoh said to Joseph, since God has shown you all this, there's none so discerning and wise as you are. Okay, have you ever been on a committee and you said something, what we ought to do is, who got the job? Thank you for electing yourself. You will be our leader for this. It's like, don't miss the meeting. You'll be president of something. Okay, so that's what we have here. You shall, verse 40, be over my house, and all my people shall order themselves as you command. Only as regards the throne will I be greater than you. This is high caliber stuff. Okay, so if the president dies, who's the president? The vice. And if the vice president dies, who's next? Speaker of the House. We sometimes forget that third role, but that Speaker of the House is actually the third in the line. So this is like the vice president, if you will, of the country. Verse 41, and Pharaoh said to Joseph, see, I have set you over the land of Egypt. Then Pharaoh took, just to make this official, took his signet ring, and this would be the ring that he would, as part of, you would put some wax on a document, press the ring into the wax, your image of the ring, this would be raised in the wax, and that's the seal. Okay? So the signet ring from his hand, and put it on Joseph's hand, and clothed him in garments of fine linen. This guy just can't get away from his wardrobe, can he? Here we got clothes again with Joseph's life. Clothed him in garments, and put a gold chain about his neck, and he made him ride in the second chariot. I mean, wow. This is like, you get what do they call the president's car? The Beast? Is that the name of it? The Beast? So this is Beast number 2, Air Force 2 or something like that. And they called out before him, bow the knee. Okay. Thus he set him over all the land of Egypt. Moreover, Pharaoh said to Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without your consent, no one shall lift up a hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaph-Anat Paneah, and he gave him in marriage Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera. Whoa, hold it. Where did we run across this name? The formal name of Potiphar. But is it the same guy from earlier? How is this one identified? Priest of On. Priest of On. So maybe the fact that Moses puts priest of On, this is a different guy. But the play on the word is what the Hebrew is all about. And that may be the interesting part. So Joseph went out over the land of Egypt. I'm going to just keep reading. Joseph was, this is interesting, 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. Do you remember anybody else who was 30 years old when he began his ministry? Luke chapter 3. That's when he was baptized, at 30 years of age. And he went out so is there something magical about that? Don't know, but it's just kind of interesting to know. So, and Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went through all the land of Egypt. During the 7 plentiful years, the earth produced abundantly. And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years which occurred in the land of Egypt and put the food in the cities. He put in every city the food from the fields around it. And Joseph stored up grain in a great abundance, like the sand of the sea, until it ceased to measure it, for it could not be measured. That's a bumper crop. Okay, that's 140 bushel acre corn there. That's what that is. Okay. Before the year of famine came, 2 sons were born to Joseph. So he has a wife, we know that. Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On, bore them to him. Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh. And of course, you want to remember these names, Manasseh and Ephraim, because they will feature prominently as tribes themselves. They will take the place of Joseph, one of the brothers. There will be landmass on both the eastern side and the western side of the Jordan River after Manasseh. And Ephraim will actually blend in with the tribe of Judah, which is the Messianic tribe. So, what does Manasseh mean? It means forget. How would you like that? Forgetful, dinner. What's your name? Forget. Oh, did your folks forget or what? Anyway, forget all my hardship and all my father's house. So he's trying to put his past, what? What's the line from, is it Lion King? You got to put your behind in your past, which is not the way to say that. But you got to put the past behind you. And so he's trying to forget that. The name of the second he called Ephraim, for God has made me fruitful in the land of my affliction. So again, forgetfulness and fruitfulness are the names of his children. The 7 years of plenty that occurred in the land of Egypt came to an end, and the 7 years of famine began to come. As Joseph had said, there was famine in all the lands. Now, how far this famine went, I don't know. I don't get the impression it was worldwide, but it was wide enough that parts of it went up from Egypt up all the way to Israel, the land of Israel. So anyway, all the land of Egypt was, it says, I'll back up a little bit. And Joseph said there was famine in all the land, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. When all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. Pharaoh said to all the Egyptians, go to Joseph. What he says, that's what you need to do. So when the famine had spread over all the land, Joseph opened up the storehouses and sold to the Egyptians, for the famine was severe in the land of Egypt. Moreover, all the earth came to Egypt. Now again, it could be all the earth, all the known peoples of the earth. It could be that. I'm not afraid to say that's what it means. But keep in mind that this word all can sometimes be like, we say, well, we had Bible study tonight and everybody was there. Well, no, the Bible uses language like we do. It could just mean a great portion of or representative groups came to Egypt to Joseph. I'm not trying to steal away from what the Bible may actually be saying there. To Joseph to buy grain because the famine was severe over all the earth. Now, when we get into the next chapter, we're going to find that the famine doesn't go very low. You know, we got 7 years of this. And it doesn't get very past about the first year, and things are bad. So people are going to forget how good they had it by virtue of what's here. So let's back up and just notice a few things here on your notes. And that is this. Pharaoh's impressed with him. He thinks he has the spirit of the gods in him. Actually, kind of interesting here, the fact that all the pharaohs were polytheists. They were idol worshipers. They worshiped the Nile. They worshiped a lot of the things that were involved in the 10 plagues in the next book of the Bible, Exodus. But one Pharaoh was a monotheist, a God worshiper, a one God worshiper. And his name was Amenhotep IV. I put him in your notes there. Amenhotep IV. However, he had a short-lived reign, and would you believe this? That they basically erased the tape. Okay, I'm making a reference to a certain hotel in Washington, D.C. They erased the tape. And so that's what happened here. The following pharaohs who were polytheists, idol worshipers, they tried to erase Amenhotep IV from the records because they were embarrassed. He's obviously like Christians. Christians are atheists because they don't believe in the gods. That was the charge against Christians in the early days after the New Testament. Okay, is this making sense? So anyway, Pharaoh thinks that, wow, this guy has the spirit of the gods in him. I don't think Pharaoh is saying, oh, I know the God of Scripture, the God of Abraham, Isaac. No, he's not that at all, okay? Joseph gets the clout here by being second in command. And by the way, the name, he changes his name. Do you remember with Nebuchadnezzar, he changed Daniel's name to Belteshazzar? When somebody messes with your identity and changes your name, it probably means they're trying to enculturate you to something else. Because this name means revealer of secrets. Well, Joseph was that, a revealer of secrets. But be careful when they change your name, because they change your identity. And that's always a dangerous kind of thing. And he gave him his wife, which happens to be Potiphar's daughter. Again, I'm going to argue that this is a different Potiphar than the other guy who had the wife that tried to get with Joseph, but just by virtue of the identification, priest of On. The Asenath, his wife's name, means gift of the sun god. So I think you pick up a little bit there of the flavor of the religion of home. So here's the ironies. And I think that the Hebrew writer, in this case Moses, is giving us some ironies, and here's one of them. Joseph is now in charge of a guy named Potiphar. That at least ought to make us smile. It's like, oh man, goodness. So the play on words. Keep in mind that one of the biggest parts of Hebrew humor is paranomasia, play on words. Second, Joseph is reliving Jacob's experience, his daddy. Jacob went up north to Haran of Mesopotamia. He works for Laban for 20-some years. He gets married in the process. After having to get Leah, he wanted Rachel. So Jacob is almost like in captivity. And so is Joseph. So these lives just kind of go on top of each other at times. And we see that. He's 30 years old, like Jesus was. And by the way, one of the guys, I don't remember if this is Paul Kessling or James Smith, who imagine how different Joseph's life had been if he hadn't said to Mrs. Potiphar, no. What if he had succumbed? What if he had yielded to that temptation? All of this would be so different, it looks like to me. But he had integrity, and he didn't do that. The names of the boys we've already talked about, and the famine is bad. So let's come to the next chapter then. Chapter 42, the brothers end up bowing to Joseph. Do you remember? That's what his dream was back in chapter 37. There would come a day. Now, they don't even know it's Joseph. That's what's even more sly about this. But chapter 42, here's what happens. When Jacob, yes, he's still alive, learned that there was grain for sale in Egypt, he said to his sons, why do you look at one another? Now, this is a very interesting play on words, because you see the phrase in the ESV, when Jacob learned, guess what the Hebrew word is there? When Jacob saw. So Jacob saw the famine situation, and the brothers just saw one another. They just kind of stare at each other. Kind of interesting. Why do you look at one another? And verse 2, behold, I've heard that there is grain for sale in Egypt. Go down and buy grain for us there, that we may live and not die. So there's kind of the commission, if you will, from Dad. Verse 3, so 10, that ought to catch you, of Joseph's brothers, okay, so Joseph is number 11, and Benjamin is number 12, right? Okay, so 10 of Joseph's brothers went down to buy grain in Egypt. And by the way, when it says down, it does mean south and west, but in this case also down, because Hebron, Beersheba, Jerusalem, all sat on a hill. So again, sometimes you go down, but you go north. This time you go down, but you go southeast. So they went down to Egypt because Egypt's very low there by the Nile. And it says, verse 4, but Jacob did not send Benjamin. Why not? Well, because that's the son of Rachel, his favorite wife. And he's already lost Joseph. Now get this, Joseph is going to have one of the brothers stay in jail. That's kind of interesting, since he's been there twice. He's going to have him stay in jail. And who is that brother? Simeon. And Simeon is the second son of Leah. So it's like Joseph is trading off here just a little bit. Okay, you didn't bring Benjamin, the second one of my mama, then we'll just keep the second one of Leah. There's an interesting thing. It might be character. You remember Simeon and Levi strapped on swords and went in and destroyed the people that raped Dinah. But anyway, maybe there's other stuff going on here. But anyway, Jacob did not send Benjamin, Joseph's brother, with his brothers, for he feared that harm might happen to him. Thus the sons of Israel came to buy among the others who came from the famine that was in the land of Canaan. So it stretched at least that far. Now Joseph was governor. Now, we've not seen that title. That's what the ESV says. And the word governor here, which, by the way, only appears in one other book of the Old Testament, and it appears 3 times in the book of Ecclesiastes. Governor, governor. You might remember later, Nehemiah is called a governor, but it's not this same particular word. He's governor over the land. He was the one who sold to all the people of the land, and Joseph's brothers came and bowed themselves before him with their faces to the ground. Now, can somebody get a hold of the emotion of this for me for just a second? What would that have been like? They don't recognize you, but you know who those guys are. In fact, you can interpret their Hebrew tongue. They don't know that, but he's watching his brothers bow down. On more than one occasion in the text, Joseph will have to leave the room because he's overcome by emotion. So, Joseph's brother came in, they bowed themselves before him. Verse 7, Joseph saw his brothers and recognized them, but he treated them like strangers and spoke roughly to them. Don't want to give this away too soon. He maybe didn't know where it was all going to go. Where do you come from? As if he didn't know. He said, that from the land of Canaan to buy food. And Joseph recognized, that's the second time we've seen that word, his brothers, but they didn't recognize him. And Joseph remembered the dreams that he had dreamed of them. That's chapter 37, verse 5, if you want the reference. They said to him, no, my lord, your servants have come to buy food. Oh, excuse me. And he said to them, you're spies. You've come to see the nakedness of the land. They said, no, no, no. Your servants come to buy food. We are all sons of one man. Oh, you're giving too much away here, boys. Careful. And then this one. We are honest men. I just get the feeling like Joseph could have said, gag me with a place setting. Come on, guys, are you kidding me? Honest men, my foot. Your servants have never been spies. Well, that may be true. Verse 12, he said to them, no, it is the nakedness of the land that you've come to see. And they said, we're servants, 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is no more. Boy, that's a way to couch it, right? It'd be like our grandchildren when they've broken something at our house. It's never, I broke this, Gaga. I broke this, Papa. It's, this got broke. Okay. I'm sure you're not guilty. You'd never do anything like that. We're honest men. One is no more. How do you think Joseph dealt with that? One is no more. Like, turn the knife while you got it in there, please. But Joseph said to them, it is as I said to you, you are spies. By this you shall be tested, by the life of Pharaoh. That's kind of like a swearing, like I'd swear it on a stack of Bibles. You shall not go from this place unless your youngest brother comes here. Send one of you and let him bring your brother while he remained confined, that your words may be tested, whether there's truth in you. Or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely you're spies. And he put them all together in custody for 3 days. There's one of those 3-day stories in the Bible again. And which jail do you think he put them in? Can't say that he did, but he might have said, I know those guys down in that jail really well. I don't know. On the 3rd day, oh man, that's what we're going to celebrate this weekend. Joseph said to them, do this and you will live, for I fear God. I don't know what they would have heard in that statement. And maybe it just means, maybe all he's telling them at this point is, I respect deity. So what has happened? What happened 3 days later? Joseph changed his mind. Joseph decided to ease off a bit. So, if you are honest men, let one of your brothers remain confined. Oh, not the whole shooting match. Where you are in custody, and let the rest go and carry grain for the famine of your households. And bring your youngest brother to me. He still wants that. So your words will be verified, and you shall not die. And they did so. Then they said to one another, in truth, this is kind of interesting. Moses is letting us into the cranium of the boys. We get inside their heads a little bit here. And by the way, by the time that Moses is preaching this and teaching this to the children of Israel, they're getting ready to cross into the promised land, and so they know the story already. But they're able to hear this with fresh ears, and so because their situation is ours. In truth, it says, we are guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the distress of his soul when he begged us, and we did not listen. That is why this distress has come upon us. Isn't it interesting? It's kind of like the farmers at the bowling alley back in Illinois. They always wanted me to go down and have coffee with them. Well, first of all, I hate coffee. And second of all, it seemed like a colossal waste of time. But I should have done it. I should have gone. And one of the elders in the church said that to me one time. He was right. I probably should have socialized in the community a little bit more than I did. But anyway, I can tell you what the coffee shop talk is if there's drought. It turns theological. Now, I wonder why God is doing this. Isn't it interesting? It's like a default setting in us that somehow we think this world and how we interact with it, ultimately we know somebody else is in charge. That's their thinking. We're getting what for here. So, we read in verse 21, they said, this is why we're guilty. Verse 22, Reuben then speaks up. This is the oldest boy, because the oldest boys always speak up, right? Reuben said, did I not tell you not to sin against the boy? But you didn't listen. So now there comes a reckoning for his blood. They did not know that Joseph understood them, for there was an interpreter between them. And then he turned away from them and wept. This is a good man. This is a very good man, even though he's playing cat and mouse with them a little bit here. And he returned to them and spoke to them. And he took Simeon from them and bound him before their eyes. And Joseph gave orders to fill their bags with grain. This is getting worse, isn't it? So let's just play this trick on him. We're going to take Simeon. You guys go home. You bring Benjamin back with you. And we'll keep Simeon until you get back. And then he said to his servants, put their money back in their sacks of grain, and to give them provisions for the journey. This was done. Okay, everything went good until they stopped at the rest stop, right? Then they loaded their donkeys with the grain and departed. As one of them opened his sack to give his donkey fodder at the lodging place, he saw his money in the mouth of his sack. He said to his brother, my money's been put back. Here it is in the mouth of my sack. At this, their hearts failed him, and they turned trembling to one another, saying, what is this that God has done? I don't think God had anything to do with this. Could we defend God just a little bit here? But that's how we think, isn't it? That God is responsible for this. Well, verse 29, when they came to Jacob, their father, in the land of Canaan, they told him all that had happened to them, saying, the man, the lord of the land, earlier called the governor, spoke roughly to us and took us to be spies of the land. But we said to him, we're honest men. We've never been spies. We're 12 brothers. One sons of our father. One is no more, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. Then the man, the lord of the land, said to us, by this I shall know that you are honest men. Leave one of your brothers with me and take grain for the famine for your households and go your way. Bring your youngest brother to me, then I shall know that you're not spies, but honest men. I will deliver your brother to you, and you shall trade in the land. As they emptied, they're telling Jacob all this. Okay? I don't know if Jacob is rolling his eyes. I don't know. And as they emptied their sacks, behold, every man's bundle of money was in. So it's not just one person, it's everybody. When they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. I bet. And Jacob, their father, said to them, you have bereaved me. That's a death word. That's a death word. He felt the same way when Dinah was raped. But my children, Joseph is no more, Simeon is no more, and now you take Benjamin? All this has come against me. And Reuben said to his father, now maybe he just feels responsible, but he steps up to the plate. He and Judah will step up to the plate before this cat and mouse game is over. And it says, Reuben said, kill my 2 sons if I do not bring him back to you. Now, is that literally understood, or is that figure of speech, or is that some kind of vow? Put him into my hands, I will bring him back to you. But he said, my son shall not go on with you, for his brother is dead, and he's the only one left. If harm should happen to him on the journey that you are to make, you will bring my gray hairs with sorrow to Sheol. Sheol, of course, being the reference to the grave or the pit. Okay, a couple notes on this, then the applications, and we'll stop. I already mentioned about the word saw. That's the first item there. We're also mentioned about the brothers and governor. Also, Joseph was going to treat them roughly. That means stiff-necked or hard. Okay. The irony of the we are honest men, already mentioned that, and why Simeon was substituted as opposed to somebody else, because he's a second like Benjamin is. And so they're thinking that God is upset with us, that God's the one that's behind this. Well, what are some applications here for us tonight? Again, don't forget the big picture. God is preserving the Messianic family. That's the big picture. But here are some other things that might spill out of this. God uses what we understand to communicate with us. Corn and cows. What's he got to do to get your attention? He's got to speak your language. It's what good salesmen do. Speak the language of the customer, right? Number two, we need to probably know the protocol for every situation in which we find ourselves. When Joseph knew he was going to appear before Pharaoh, probably they made him do this in a way, but he shaved and he changed clothes. You know, if you get invited to the Oval Office, you probably don't go in with torn jeans. Okay? That's not how the president dresses, and that's probably how you should not dress either. So anyway, know the protocol for every situation. Number three, it's not wrong to offer yourself at times. If you feel like you can do something, make a difference, that doesn't have to be arrogance or pride. It can be, I want to make a contribution. Number four, pagans sometimes listen to believers. I know we think that sometimes that's not the case, but they might even embrace our God if we give them a good enough portrayal of him. Number five, the world always will try to enculturate us. They'll change our names. They'll change the vocabulary. They'll change the language. And that's being done in our current culture, in case you don't know. Number six, sometimes believers rise to governmental power. I mean, Christians can serve in high places in government. It's evident in the Bible. Number seven, sometimes we walk naively into tough situations. Did the brothers expect to run into what they found? They were innocent as much as they could be innocent. They said they were honest, but they were going down to Egypt to buy food. What could possibly happen? Have you said, like we've said many times at our house, you know, what else could possibly go wrong? Don't say that. Because it will. Okay. Number eight, we look to God when things go bad, maybe even to blame him. Do we look to him when things go well? There are times when I thank the Lord for, there are certain prayers I pray for my children every day. And when I mean every day, I mean every day. And every so often I say, oh, I haven't thanked you for answering that prayer day after day after day. When I say about those two girls, please, Lord, let them have good blood sugars today and present a cure or healing for them. I pray it every day. They're still both alive with type 1 diabetes. So, anyway, is Joseph a model for us to how to treat those who have harmed us? I don't know that he's totally exemplary here. I don't know that he's exonerated. He's still playing kind of cat and mouse with these guys. But Jesus does talk about turning the other cheek. Jesus does talk about, not reviling when you've been reviled. And so there's stuff on the Sermon on the Mount about that, and we probably need to take a lesson from Joseph. Hey, you can treat people well when they have treated you with ill will. You can. You can. God will help you. All right. It is about 5 till, probably none time. Mr. Mike, why don't you come up here for a minute? I'm going to hand him this microphone because I want him to tell you he's getting ready to go to Jamaica, and I was very grateful for our leaders and what they did to kind of help them a little bit, which really means you people, because you were the ones who helped fund some of it.
So 50 years ago this summer, I took a trip to Kingston, Jamaica with Harvey and Nancy Backus, 3 other students from Ozark. They were all qualifying for an internship. I was too young to do that. I was just 19, only been in college 2 years, but I felt a calling from the Lord to go. And I loved Harvey and Nancy. So I went and I spent the summer in vacation Bible schools and camps and going out to the country churches and getting to know people. And I felt right at home. Came back to Ozark, did my junior year of college, and again, felt a call to go, not just for the summer in 1976, missed the bicentennial, I guess, that year, but stay for the fall semester, because I believe that there were things that were going to look differently in the fall. There wouldn't be in vacation Bible schools, it wouldn't be church camps, but there'd be lots of interaction with elders and in the churches and the ministers out in the country churches. It was a great summer. Worked with Bob and Jackie Muter, who later went on to start Windward Island School of Evangelism, Harold and Adele Hill. And I actually lived with a Jamaican family, the Dawkins family, and got to know them. And changed my life. About a month ago, just about a little over a month ago, Jeff Robertson asked Jackie and I to come over for supper. He has been a professor at Windward Island School of Evangelism. I have visited down there. Jackie sent me once to teach and preach and sing and do whatever, make cabinets and whatever they needed done. That was back in 2002. And Jeff explained to us that the model of Windward Islands was changing. They were having a hard time having students come to Barbados now. They've been in St. Lucia, then St. Vincent, and now they're in Barbados. And so they just, as a board, they have a board of directors, and they just prayed about this and decided the model's got to change a little bit. And so they sent out an invitation to all the Windward Islands graduates who are in Jamaica, Guyana, Dominican Republic, not all English-speaking countries, but who have graduated with 2-year Bible degrees, intensive Bible degrees, and are back often being tent-making type missionaries and preachers, and also preaching in churches. And Jeff explained this to Jackie and myself in their living room, and we said, wow, that's a big change. What's that going to look like? And he said, well, we sent out this invitation that we want to try and come back and work with you in your country. This is how the college is going to change its focus and do training on site. And some of it might be a week, some might be a month. Having more hands-on training in their location, going to them instead of them going to Barbados. I said, wow, that sounds great. It's good that you're willing to change, because the college has been in existence for close to 40 years. And then Jeff said, and we have an invitation request from the ministers and leadership in the Jamaican churches around Kingston. Not exactly your vacation spots. That's more Ocho Rios and Montego Bay. And Jeff said, we'd like you to go and be the one that leads that retreat. Whew, got to pray about that one just a bit. It was only a couple days, though, and Jackie said, hey, you'll know for sure that God's in it, because you can't do it all. You prepare what you can prepare, and then just let God take it. So I think it was the next day, could have been 2 days later, I called Jeff and I said, I'm in, let's go. So I've been on the phone, or WhatsApp, I guess is the way you call people, I'm learning, with a couple Jamaican brothers who preaches in church. One is the Maca Tree Church of Christ, and another is a young man from way out in the boonies, out in the country. And so I've been preparing, just trying to pull together things that would be an encouragement to them, but also teach from the scriptures. And what's interesting is that on my second year in Jamaica, I actually taught classes on Saturday morning from a book called Training in Service, which is an old Christian Standard book, Christian Standard book. And we taught those to elders who would take buses, because they didn't have cars. They would get on a bus and come into Kingston to the church camp that we ran in the summertime, and they'd spend the night at the camp, and I was there with them, and then we'd do classes the next morning, Saturday. Then they all go back out to the country, some pretty long bus rides, and then they'd be preaching in churches on Sunday morning out there. And so I'm thinking that there's a possibility that one of those 8, 9, 10-year-old children that were in camp at Constant Spring Camp would be 60 years old now. I'm almost 70. You know, and they might be coming to this retreat. Whew, that'd be a glory hallelujah. So somewhere a couple weeks ago, and actually I didn't suggest this, it was one of our leadership said, hey, are you going to ask Park Plaza to get involved and perhaps give a gift for that? And I said, no, Windward Island is going to buy my plane ticket. I'll take care of the other stuff. And then I thought, no, Mike, don't be like that. So I wrote him a letter, and as it turns out, the church was willing to buy enough copies of this book by David Faust for me to gift one of these books to each one of those leaders that are coming to the retreat. And then Jackie got busy, and she embroidered a Bible bookmark for every one of them to give to their wife, because the wives won't be at the retreat. And it's a 3-day retreat. It begins next Wednesday, so I'll be leaving Tuesday morning, flying to Jamaica and into Kingston. But I have an ask of you. In the front of this book, I had our church secretaries help me, and Jackie actually is the one that did the typing because she's a librarian. She knows all about books. We put a label in the front, and it's a stick-on label. You'll see them in these books. Brother Mark shared the verse that I printed. I have been young and now am old, yet have I not seen the righteous forsaken, nor his seed begging for bread. And below that, I wrote, this book is gifted to you from your brethren at Park Plaza Christian Church in Joplin, Missouri. May God multiply your ministry, April 2025. I know the Jamaicans well enough to know that they appreciate personal stuff. They're not big conference type people. You really get farther along when you disciple and mentor people or small groups. So what I'd like to ask of you, if you would, and if you don't feel like doing it tonight, these will be here in the fellowship hall Sunday, because we're going to have some donuts and coffee and visiting. I'd like you to write a prayer or a blessing right in that front cover. Now, some of them have already been done. Our church staff did it sometime in the last couple of days. And, you know, and if that's not your way to communicate, that's okay. I'm not expecting everybody, but I want to give you that opportunity. You can sign your name. I wouldn't put your phone number or your email address or something like that. Social Security number, your bank, you know, routing, and no. But these are men and married to ladies out in the churches who are doing just like you and me. They're really volunteer ministry leaders out in the churches, and they could use a little bit of encouragement. So I'd like you to consider that. And can I close in prayer? Okay, yeah. So the books will be out there. I'm in no hurry to get home. If there's more than one person that writes in it, that's okay. I've noticed a few books that have several. If you can't fit it all on that page, just write it over here, okay? And that'll be a way that we can all be a part of that ministry.
Right here. Let's just pray for Mike, and let's bow our heads, and we'll do that just right now. Thank you, Lord, for our time to be together tonight, and thank you for Mike and his great missionary zeal. First of all, we just pray that if you tarry your coming, you'll give him a safe flight down to Jamaica on Tuesday, and then just make the retreat there, the conference there, just a real fruitful time of people growing in you. May the gifts that have been given by the church to help facilitate this trip and gift for the people down there. A big gift in addition to the books from Park Plaza Christian Church, just to encourage the people in the Windward Island School of Evangelism efforts to kind of retool themselves and remake themselves from a college to kind of an equipping center for the church people. We pray that you'd this would be successful and that you'd be honored in it all. And bring Mike safely back to us, and we can't wait to hear the stories. In Jesus' name we pray. And everybody said, amen. Thank you,
And
Mike.
I will learn as much from them